Kaspa has finally achieved the first part of what I'm calling a multi-step breakout, and we're going to look exactly at what I'm meaning here, because on the chart we have several different pieces at which we're going to have to break above to essentially signal a turnaround, because we have been in a pretty long and well drawn out downtrend for the Kaspa coin. So it is really important that we continue to keep hitting these momentum targets that keep moving us to the upside. So I want to talk all about that today. Also want to do a little bit of an overview of where we're at kind of relations or in relation to all of the different altcoins in the space to see how Kaspa is performing. It's performing pretty well, but I do still think that there is a point at which we could start to see it overperform, just given the recent underperformance. Now, if it continues to underperform to the upside as well, then maybe it starts to kind of change the narrative or change the dynamics of Kaspa, meaning that it's just not as strong as it used to be. Now, I'm a little skeptical of this, but there is always that possibility, and we have to be objective when we're looking at this stuff in crypto, because if you're not and you're trying to tell yourself a story that may not necessarily be true, that is a fantastic way to lose a lot of money. And so obviously we don't want to be doing that here on the channel. So we'll go on ahead and we'll take a quick look, stepping right on into the crypto bubbles. We can see kind of exactly what I was talking about. Kaspa up about 4.2% today, which is pretty good relative to the rest of the market. However, it is not leading the market. We can see Floki and Fartcoin obviously being the two standouts here. Per usual, I guess, meme coins are always kind of leading the way up, and then usually they're leading the way down as well, as evidenced here by Pump and Pengu at the same time. So also behind my picture here, we can see Curve, we have Flare, and then XRP up 9% just today. A really strong move by XRP. So we could see, a continued move from XRP, which would be kind of nuts. I mean, it's already been kind of the strongest performer of the cycle, so it should not be overlooked. We can see Kaspa here at 4%. Again, lagging behind ETH, Ondo, some of these top performers here, virtuals as well, but it is still performing ahead of some others. You could see, the majority of the market probably in that 2 to 3% range, with the best performers being kind of that 5+, and then some obviously way above that. So that's kind of what we're seeing from the overall altcoin market. If we do look at the Kaspa chart, I want to show you really specifically kind of what we're looking at. You can see here, we've essentially been in a downtrend since we saw our all-time high peak back in July of 2024. Ever since then, we have been seeing lower highs and lower lows all the way through. This right here, which is actually kind of ironically the sell-off during that brief war between Iran and Israel, this is actually the first higher low that we have put in over a year, well over a year. And so I think it's interesting to me, or I guess just under a year, but it's really interesting to me that this is the first higher low that we've seen. This could indicate that we are on the path to turning this ship around. Now, the next path to that, and we've kind of already sort of hit it on a more micro time frame, is let's zoom in here a little bit and then we can zoom back out as we get to some more of the price predictions and things like that. But what we can see here is we have kind of hit the first task of trying to turn around this momentum and moving it more to an uptrend rather than a downtrend. Is we can see here we have broken above this key level of resistance at the 0.236 range. You can see this has been a key level of support as well as resistance multiple different times. Funny story, I was actually kind of going through and mapping out this chart as I usually do, hitting key levels of support and resistance. And one thing that I found, and so I ended up just deleting them anyways, because one thing that I found is the 0.236 and 0.382 were kind of the two key levels I identified as kind of upcoming supports and resistances. 236 is currently a support. You can already actually see we did a little bit of a break and then a retest, basically hitting exactly onto the 236, and then we are now getting bought back up again. So we'll have to see, and we'll monitor this over the next couple of days to see if we can actually see the break and then the retest hold here. It appears that way so far, but of course, we'll have to see over time. That was the first level, and then of course we have the resistance up at this level. You can see kind of a swing high up in this range, and then as well as a major level of support kind of back in early January. So I think this like 11 cent range is going to be kind of another key level of resistance for us to get through. We can see here is a decent level of resistance in February. We did break above it actually here in May, and we did actually find it using a little bit of both resistance and support kind of in both directions, but we were kind of passing through this level fairly easily. And then we obviously have the 0.5 up here, which is kind of like that swing high that we got back in May. So something to think about here as we're kind of moving back up. This is kind of the multi-step breakout that I was talking about, and we're going to break this down a little bit more clearly now. So we can see here, this is what I would consider step one of the breakout. This was a pretty difficult level of resistance, something we had not seen since the end of May. And so we have now broken above this, which is good. First time in about 6 weeks. And then we do appear to have broken, retested, and now we're continuing our way up. This is really good news. Now, the next part of this multi-step breakout, in my opinion, is going to be breaking this trend line. If you look here, this trend line has held pretty strong for quite a while. Now, it doesn't quite hold this one. This high would have been kind of up in this range if it were to hold. So I only saw these two as well as kind of some of the other ones in this range. But I think more necessarily than a trend line, this is a very clear pattern of a downtrend. So in the short term, we want to see this kind of initial trend line break. I don't think it's going to be particularly strong just because there's not a ton of data showing or being kind of held along this trend line. And it actually is probably more like this. More specifically. So we'd probably see this break kind of between like the 9 to 10 cent range, probably like 10-ish cents is what I would call it. And then we continue marching along until we get to this 382 level, which is going to be in the low 11 cent range. So essentially we've got something here at 9, something here at 10, and something here at 11. After we break out of that, it would look like we have a fairly clear shot up until this 13 cent range. This is going to be, again, another really major level of resistance. And honestly, this is the key one. This is the key level of resistance that we need to break. These are all kind of prerequisites until the main one, which is right here. The main reason I say that is because if we are looking to flip this trend, you can already see here, we've put in a higher low. Let's start drawing some things. Now, my drawing button isn't really working today, so you'll just have to imagine with me as we look through this. But you can see here, we had the lowest low at this point, back in this kind of early April range. We then go up here and we have the higher low up here in this kind of like mid to late June range. And then we have the high right here. Obviously we have a higher high from this point. We also have a higher low from this point. So on more of the micro level, we can see the uptrend. Now, of course, this was broken when we broke all the way back down to this more like swing low. So that means that the swing high does need to be a higher high than this. So that's why I say this 0.5 range is actually the most difficult and the most important that we need to break. Because when we break this, then that means we've officially put in a higher high on a swing high basis. So now we can see higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher, and then of course we'd want to see it come back, ideally settling on kind of like the 382 or the 236 range as kind of the swing low. Obviously the higher the better, but that is kind of what we would be looking for. So over the next little while, it's very, very important that we see this break. Now, to go back and kind of zoom out and look at this as a big picture, I wanted to take a look and kind of view a couple of different things. So the first one is obviously we have a pretty clear path back to all-time highs, which is at that 20 cent mark. You can see here, Kaspa actually respects the Fibonacci's quite well. So this is a pretty good roadmap of how we get there. 13 cents, 14.8 cents, 17.4 cents, and then back to 20.7 cents, kind of being the major levels to be watching for until we get there. And then after that, we break out up into this 1618, which is 30 cents. And then we have the 2618, which is 45 cents, 3618, 60 cents, and then the 4236 at the 70 cent mark. Now, I am thinking, if we are to see some actual volume and a decent move coming out, we could realistically see a strong move up at least to 30 cents, potentially even 45. And I've got a really, really good reason for both of those based on what we already have seen in the charts. Depending on how long it takes to get here, we could even be looking at the 3618 and potentially the 4236. Now, let's go take a look at what I'm meaning specifically with those, because there are some pretty reasonable methods as to how we're getting here. And again, we have seen that Kaspa does respect Fibonacci's pretty well. So I do actually hold a little bit more weight in these numbers than I would normally. And before we move over to that, if you are looking to trade Kaspa, whether it's leverage trading or just acquire more spot, feel free to use the link in the description below to BTCC. BTCC is a fantastic exchange. They have a 10% bonus on first time deposits, as well as up to $10,055 in deposit and trading bonuses. No KYC or VPN required. Really, really great place to trade if you are interested. And then I also do have that link to that trading bot down if you want to copy trade it down to it, and that's using the BloFin link. So if you're interested in either of those, feel free to check those out. But moving along, I want to take a look at two different things here. The first is we have the Kaspa rainbow chart. Some of you may think this looks familiar. That is because it is familiar. This is the same type of rainbow chart that Bitcoin has. And as we've seen, Bitcoin has respected it pretty clearly. Kaspa has generally respected this pretty clearly as well. We can see right now it is actually way below even the Kaspa is dead range. Right now, if we were to be in the Kaspa is dead range, we would be at about 14 cents for us to be kind of above that level. So obviously not above 14 cents. We are down here sitting at 9 cents. So there is some ground to be made up here if we are to see that kind of look to continue. The good news is, though, is if we come up here, the sell now range is up almost at 70 cents. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's because it's the 4236 fib level. And this, of course, would mean that it is massively overextended. So we're seeing some really interesting things kind of aligning here with the Kaspa rainbow chart as well as the Fibonacci levels. So we can see here 13 cents, 18 cents, 24 cents, 31. Again, they're putting fair price at 31 cents as of right now. We have the first fib extension at 1618 at about 30 cents. Again, numbers lining up pretty decently here. And this is something where if we go over and we take a look at the Kaspa power law, we can see exactly that. The fair price is 30.9 cents. Again, basically right on the 1618 fib extension. We have the support at 23 cents. Then we also have the resistance up at 41 cents. We don't, these numbers kind of vary a little bit because we see the 2618 at about 45 cents. But this is kind of what we're seeing with the fib extensions. Currently, it is about 70% undervalued compared to what is kind of generally deemed as the fair price per the Kaspa power law. So again, whether you want to believe in the Kaspa power law or not, that is of course your own decision. I'm just showing you kind of what we are seeing through data and some pretty interesting coincidences that we are seeing from both the fib levels as well as the Kaspa power law. I think a lot of this is really, really interesting. So of course you need to make your own decisions whether you're going to be buying or selling or anything like that. I'm here just to provide you information and give you some context on what I'm personally seeing in the market. Right now, I think Kaspa is in a very, very interesting place, particularly with the tides kind of shifting on altcoins. I think there is a lot of opportunity that we could potentially see coming in here for Kaspa. So hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, of course, feel free to like and subscribe. It does really help me out and support the channel. Also, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, whatever, drop those in the comment section as well. I do read and respond to all of those. So really appreciate all of your time. If you have made it this far in the video, I do really appreciate being able to make videos daily and kind of interact with you guys in whatever capacity possible. So really, really appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.